Welcome back. This is day 15. We are in the final week. We are in week 3 of this 21-day brand communications course right here on my YouTube channel, Serena's Playbook, where you are leveling up your strategic thinking. Day 15, we're going to talk about, for remainder of this week actually, execution and performance of our brand communications. And in this video right now, I want to talk about the sales pitch, selling, why you hate selling. Maybe you love it. I'm going to talk about what my experience has been of sales in my 20s and 30s, and now in my 40s, why I'm falling back in love with sales and speaking passionately with a pitch, which is really what sales is about. If you break it down, then it's really about knowing your subject and speaking about it confidently. And then there's being mindful and aware of you, the recipient of your communication. So that's what we're going to focus on for now. The final stretch, the 7 days remaining of my 21-day brand communications course for any entrepreneur, any communicator, any content creator, brand builder, even if you are a student. So story time. I'm going to give you 2 stories to really bring this video and this message to life. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. Let's go. So, when I was in my 20s, before I decided to return to my university where I was reading politics because I took a year out. I'd done badly and I needed to go back to retake the year and then continue finishing it. I did badly for a whole host of reasons. There were so many things going on and working a lot also, because I always had a part-time, sometimes full-time job while studying. I don't know how I managed that, but I did. And so I was in my year out at university, and on this year out, I did a range of jobs. I had moved out of sales and retail and quickly into administration jobs around the time of starting university. By this time, when I was on this year out, I was already an executive PA, which is a pretty good job for a university student. I was working full time at one stage for a government department, working in policy, supporting policy advisors, actually in my final year of university. So I got some pretty superb experience whilst I was studying. It meant I never went on trips with friends, didn't really do any family holidays. There was that one trip to Venice my sisters paid for that myself, my mum, and my sisters had gone on. And I remember my sister hitting her head really like hard on a statue, and she had concussion for like a day. But I bought this most gorgeous red coat from a boutique, and I still have that coat. I've got so many compliments on it for years. So that was my highlight of student life, that red coat and that quick trip to Venice with my family, because I never went on holiday, always had a job. But when I got offered a job in, at the time it was called Huxley or Huntress, it was a really aggressive but successful and impressive recruitment sales agency. All I know is I saw an advert in the paper. That's how you would find jobs. And you would go ahead and email your CV. This is in the early noughties. And then you would book an interview, go for multiple assessment sessions. You would do a personality character assessment. I don't know whether it was Myers-Briggs they were using. I don't have much faith in those tests. But anywho, I did everything. I went through a whole process, and this is before I decided to return to university to finish reading politics and leaving with my degree, which is what I eventually did. But I got offered the job. I got offered the job by such an enthusiastic and supportive manager. Oh, I wish I could remember her name, but she was one of the assessors on the panel. I passed everything really well, and I declined to take the role because I was intimidated by it, by the amount of churn involved and how much activity would be involved. But they had such faith in me that I was not only offered the job that was advertised, I was offered a job one level up, and I declined. I declined, and she was so disappointed. I knew I could sell, but the part of me that was scared to accept was the part that would experience fatigue or would be worried about the bad days because I had done sales before. I remember selling accidental death insurance in a telesales department. That was interesting. So I was worried about the bad days and not being able to be consistent. However, the main reason for declining the opportunity was because I had to return to university. I knew it was something that not only was disappointing family, but I would perhaps regret. I remember bumping into that recruiter, that manager on the tube one night, months later, and she remembered me, my name. She was coming off the tube, I was getting on. She said, "Call me, call me." And I was just thinking, "Oh, there's no way." I was so intimidated by it. The next story, years later, I remember I was on a shopping spree with some friends who had flown in from abroad, and we were in Bicester Village, I think. It's Bicester Village in Oxford, and this friend whom I haven't been in touch with, it was a friend of a friend, was looking at this blazer, this really gorgeous, chic, classic, red, fitted, tailored blazer. It had a Nehru collar and it had these wonderful fabric buttons and buttoned all the way down. It just fit her figure so beautifully. I sound so old saying her figure, but it really did. It suited her. And the way I sold it to her, I even surprised myself. I remember it being pointed out multiple times by the group of friends saying, "You should get into sales. Like, you really know your stuff." The way I ended up describing this jacket like the Mona Lisa of blazers. And it just became the thing that I used to basically sell this jacket to her. And ever since then, I have been scared of sales. I've worked in publicity, in press offices, in print publishing, on the newsroom floor, and in so many different settings. And I've always been scared of sales, but then also love the buzz of it. A big part of public relations, the job of being in communications, is to know your situation, the situation of interest, the project, the campaign so well that you can communicate and present to any stakeholder, to any board, to anyone with an interest in the campaign, in the project, in the situation. When I worked in print publishing, I would have to present findings to very senior board members, to managing editors of broadsheet press. I was selling all the time. I just didn't realize it. And I still do it and I don't realize it. And this is the thing. And this is so basic. And this is the clarity that I want to offer you. All you have to do is know your stuff. I was talking to a close loved one and they were talking about, oh, these smart people in a room and there's me. And I said, no, they're just very confident in what their abilities are. In this situation, you probably are more able and more skilled and more experienced than them, but you're just not giving yourself the credit. You're not confident in your ability of what you know and what you can deliver. And with sales, it really is just about knowing the thing and speaking about it confidently, and the other person just gets it. Now, there are obviously other techniques, there are other elements that you need to be right and sharp on, and we're going to go through those for the remainder of this week. Why is it important to talk about sales? Because I'm allergic to it, and so I'm ripping the Band-Aid off as well. We're going to do this together, but I do it, and I've done it in my job for 20 something years. I do sales. We're having to convince various stakeholders about different ideas. We're having to negotiate. I find myself having to almost disarm people when I'm presenting on my media and politics commentary channel, when I'm having to frame ideas. I'm constantly having to juggle communication um, tools and communication devices, like vocabulary and uh, the actual wording itself and the medium, in order to get the message across and to get the investment I need or to capture attention. And I'm not always doing great at it. It's just you just can't always do great at it. Now, I wish I just said to myself, Serena, it's fine. You're going to have bad days. It's perfectly fine. But sometimes you see, I was I was completely burnt and disheartened by this one experience I had when I was doing telesales. And one week I was the top of the board. And then the following, I couldn't even get on the board. And I'm like, I did 12 sales in one day. Now I can't even get two. Sometimes you're going to have bad days, but it's one of those things that when you get in your head, ugh, it's the worst. And so getting out of your head and sticking to what you know and having your bullet points and having your script ready means that it can just roll off the tongue. But just being very close to the subject matter and having managed so many different facets of the subject in different ways, like in one meeting or a presentation or for a social media post or for a rebuttal here or there, you become the expert. And so you can then speak about it confidently. So, yes, there is a piece about confidence here, but before confidence comes exposure. You need to have a substantial amount, a significant amount of exposure to the thing for you to feel that you know enough. And so, if we don't feel confident enough, it's usually because we haven't had as much exposure. If we're not selling well, if the words aren't rolling off our tongue, it's because we haven't had enough exposure. Now, this whole video is completely unscripted, but I know it because I'm hydrated, I've had my meal, and I know my experiences. There's two stories I gave you. And because I've been in the game for more than 20 years and I'm still in the arena doing the work, I can speak about it confidently, eloquently, well, with some ums and ahs, some pauses, some looking away from the camera. That's fine. It's completely natural. It can't always be perfect. But when you are selling, you do have to maintain eye contact. And sometimes when I do the edits of my videos, when I look at how often I look away from the screen, whether it's my neurodivergence kicking in or something else. And I mean, neurodivergence doesn't kick in, it's just always there. But if I'm having a day where I'm really having to find the words and maybe I've got a bit of fatigue from all of my team's calls, and now it's the evening and I have to batch content, and I'm just not going to be able to stare at the camera lens down the barrel of the camera and connect with you. It's difficult. And if you're doing selling on Teams calls and having to pitch, you have to keep that eye contact. So there is, of course, an element here, uh, something to really consider, a consideration here about your fatigue, your stamina, being clear-headed. Like I said, I'm fed, I've had my caffeine, etc., etc. I've done my work day, and now I'm ready to batch content. And I can only do one or two videos because I will really struggle with the words, but I know I could do day 15 of the 21-day course. I knew I could talk about this initial sales experience. I do have the bullet points somewhere on my screen over here, and I can cover most of it within the duration of the video that I'm here filming and producing for you. So there's enough there. There's enough infrastructure, there's enough let's say scaffolding for me to begin to build on. And sometimes you just need the scaffolding. I remember when I was selling, was it ActionAid, as a volunteer, but you know, you're paid as a volunteer, and I was on in random high streets as a uni student, and also, you know, Knightsbridge and Mayfair and various places. And it was such a interesting experience to come across different kinds of people. But the thing that really worked every time is me speaking and then listening, speaking and then listening, speaking and then listening. You have to do the listening. Now, right now, I can't hear you, but I'm trying to predict and anticipate and guess what it is that you want to hear. And so that's why I have to monologue. But if you were selling, you will have to pause and stop to listen. What do they want? What do they want? How are they receiving what you're saying? And so, yes, you have to be confident in the subject matter by having enough exposure to it. Yes, you need to have some devices in place, such as an intro, some bullet points, some things to give it some structure so you're not rambling. But you also need to be a good listener and listening with every sense. Watch for the body language. Pay attention to how they're moving and how they're receiving your message. Try and make it conversation. The amount of things I've been sold through conversation has been hundreds of things, just hundreds of things that I've been sold through conversation, to the point that I thought, oh, I really like them as a person. And I never hear from them. Oh, they were an excellent salesperson. Sales, yes, confidence, yes, having awareness of the subject, yes, having some structure, some scaffolding to hang off of. However, being present, being in the conversation, paying attention. This was day 15 of 21. This is week 3, the final week of my brand communications course. We're going to talk about sales. That's right. We're going to talk about sales and effective communication, executing it, and just, you know, leveling up the performance, leveling up your strategic thinking. Wonderful to have you here. I'll see you tomorrow in day 16.